Welcome to Fixing Assets, and today we're changing the gearbox mounts. Right, let's get some camera and possibly some voiceover. Okay, so these gearbox mounts are quite new. In fact, they've never been on the road. However, I have seen what one would call negative press to say that they're possibly unreliable. So I'm putting some original style ones in. Apparently they're brittle in the shatter. So the plan is with these two to unbolt those, lift the gearbox up a bit, get them out, refit the new ones, put them back in. However, the other bit is the difficult one. The plan with this one is unbolt these ones here so that the gearbox can be pulled back a little bit and slot the new one in. Let's see how good or bad an idea that is. Now you can probably see why I've treated changing the gearbox mounts as urgent, on the basis that one nut just fell out, which one would suggest is less than ideal. Actually done this really well because that was finger tight, so I haven't managed to take the ones out I wanted to. I do, however, have a nut now that I can use to find which socket goes on it. I'm fairly sure that I don't have the right socket. I mean, who the heck doesn't put a 15mm socket in a socket set? Yeah, that is one exhaust on gearbox mount out. Heavy breathing alert. So now I've got to try and fit this into that gap. This is going to be fun. Okay, so Operation Square Peg Round Hole isn't going to work. We're going to have to drop the entire transaxle, which will make it an easier job, hopefully. Yay! The lighting because the generator's not working today. Now, as you can see, the spring plate's under springiness, it's under some form of tension. Now the key issue with dropping this is these brake lines, so it's not going to be dropped per se. It's going to perhaps be slightly moved further back, but with these bolts removed and the shock absorber removed, so that the whole thing can move backwards a little bit. And if that can move backwards a little bit, then that will give us enough space. To be honest with you, it's probably going to be more trouble than it's worth actually drop it down. More trouble than it's worth. It's going to have to they're going to have to be replaced, but it's more trouble to actually drop it down than, do anything else. So we're going to make it so that we can move it back a lot more. So, to get into some better light, we're now off that bracket. I've had to unhook that because that was the next point of tension. Same with this side. So if we'll go and have a look under here, can't see the camera, but I hope it's picking up that there is a lot more space. Yeah, so there is a fair bit more space there. Notch at the top. And we'll just see how, it was about 1 centimetre last time I tried, but we'll see how well that goes in. Right, so that there is now in position to some extent. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bolt it into the chassis and then drop the gearbox a bit so that it hopefully goes into the right position and onto the bolts. Once it's on the bolts, start pulling the gearbox back in and putting it all back together to some extent. Progress, we do actually have the front mount on the chassis, but we need to get the gearbox into position. Now, as you can hear, Mr. Noisy's back in business, so without further ado, I'll explain where we are up to now and what we're doing now. The next task I'm going to do, we still haven't got the front of the gearbox mount in, is I'm going to change these mounts over here. So I believe it's just going to be a case of undoing these 4 nuts, taking this plate here off, then taking off the old mounts, putting the new mounts on, and then basically putting the other plate back on. Job will be a good one. I'm going to take this opportunity to go onto the voiceover and apologise for having bought more microphones off Temu. Well, didn't buy them off Temu, bought them off Amazon, but may as well have bought it off Temu anyway. They were dreadful, as you can hear. Good news though, the next VW Beetle video will be with proper microphones. And I do have some DJIs now, so look forward to that. So yeah, the other thing I must point out as well, that this will soon jump to a period in the future. Now, as I've always promised myself, if I have trouble with a vehicle in any way, shape or form, I will put filming it on the back burner. There's many reasons why I've got this philosophy, and it is partly to do with the fact that things have gone wrong when I've been concentrating on filming. So I didn't want things to go wrong, so I did it properly. Anyway, as you can see, I wouldn't recommend using an electric ratchet for that job. So yeah, the things I couldn't do were, I couldn't get the big bolts lined up, and I couldn't get the other 2 at the front of the gearbox mount lined up. So what I did was I struggled on here for about an hour, gave up, came back a couple of days later having watched a few videos, and I will come back on and explain how I got it all mounted up. Now, as I said, I don't recommend using an electric ratchet for gearbox mounts. But apparently I did use one. If you've been enjoying this content, please like it, click that like button, click the comment button and write something good, like how awesome the video is, and subscribe for more updates. It's not just updates on the Beetle, there's also one video going to be released soon and possibly another one just as relatively soon on the Marina. I've also got some adventures to to edit and record and stuff, and there's more progress on the Beetle. Definitely, there's definitely one more video in the can. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this video short because I've cut it too long. Hello, it's 2 days later and I've had a bit more progress on the Blue Beetle with regards to the gearbox. So, how did I get them bloody bolts aligned? Well, first of all, schoolboy error. I've disconnected the gear linkage. I'll put that back together at some point. Put the bolts down there. Other thing I did was I undid the nuts that I had on the gearbox mount. You see they're now joined up properly. Undid the bolts so that the mount was loose, tilted it up, put it through the holes on the gearbox, put a couple of nuts on to hold it in place, and job was a good one. Next issue I had was reassembly of the back section. So what I had to do to get these big nuts in is I had to take these nuts and bolts out so that this was floating. Obviously it was jacked up at the time. Took those nuts and bolts out, put the big bolts in a couple of turns, put the nuts and bolts back on, gearbox is back in. Now this, off camera I'm going to replace this mount because that particular thread is a bit damaged, but we don't live in a perfect world, but we're going to pretend that we do and say that that's done. The final section, which I won't bore you with, is putting the axles and the shock absorbers back on so that it's ready to roll. So, taking a lot more time and effort than I thought it would, but it was expected to be a pain in the bottom of the job. So, what do you think the next task is? I'll give you a hint. Brum, 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 brum. Yep, the engine's going in. So, what we'll need to do is we'll need to go and pick it up and put it in. So that'll be the next episode. So stay tuned for more progress on the Beetle. And also stay tuned for progress on the Marina because some welding has happened.